Hey everyone, James Labrie from Dream Theater, and you're listening to or watching the podcast Talking into Infinity with JT and Brian. Enjoy this. These guys are extremely informative. I love their dialogue. I love their interpretation of the songs, who and what we are, what we were going after. They're very accurate in their interpretations and descriptions, and I just think this is a great show, and these guys are doing a stand-up stellar job. So once again, enjoy Talking into Infinity with JT and Brian.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Talking into Infinity, a Dream Theater podcast. I am your host, John. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, talkingintoinfinity.com, and the cmsnetwork.com. We are live at those four locations every other Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. A quick show note, our next show actually will be on a Wednesday, so it's going to be Wednesday, September, I believe it would be September 21st, rather than Thursday the 22nd. So we'll be on Wednesday next time, but usually it's Thursdays. So if you'd like to catch replays of the show, just go to our YouTube channel or the YouTube channel of the CMS Network. And while you're at our channel, please do not forget to click those like and subscribe buttons so that you are notified every time we go live. And if you'd like to download audio versions of the podcast, just Google Talking into Infinity Podcast. Let's bring Brian onto the show. Man, it feels like we just did this 4 days ago, doesn't it? Oh, wait, we did just do this 4 days ago.
We did. That was my first time getting to talk to Rich Wilson, and very insightful. The idea that he was there while they were recording this orchestra parts for Octavarium, just kind of wow.
Yeah.
We were joking around with him like, hey, did you go in there and say, you might want to change a note or two here.
That flute's a little off, Jordan.
Flute's off. The violin, the guy's like, it looks like he's holding it a little bit wrong, Yeah, that was super awesome, man. I was very cool to talk to a guy who's literally interviewed all of them, and sounds like he's a super fan of the band too, which that always helps.
Yeah, and like I told you, like when I interviewed him the first time for the show about Lifting Shadows, it was a great time, and it was a great conversation. It just flowed real nicely. He had some great answers to stuff, and so I knew that it was going to be a good show, and it was better than I even hoped for. Man, it was a really good dive into Octavarium. As we talked about on the show a little bit, it was kind of cool to revisit that record because it's not one that I go back to a lot, but having done so in preparation for that show, I was kind of like, damn, this is a really good record. Like, this is a lot better than I remember. And I liked it before, but I was like, man, oh man, this is good stuff. So yeah, that was a really good time, man. And it's cool for you to get to hang out with Rich for the first time because I know you weren't able to make the first one. And yeah, it was a good time. So if you guys have not checked that out, we just put that out a few days ago. So just go to our YouTube channel if you want to watch the video, or Google Talking into Infinity if you want to download the audio version. It's right there, and it's a great conversation with Rich. It's about an hour and a half. We talked about some stuff after the Octavarium deep dive that was pretty cool. So
and going back and re-listening to that too, it's like it almost hits me every time we do one of these, and like how unique every album is.
Yeah,
and it's just so hard to say that about most bands, and I know we're super fans and we're super close to this, so sometimes it's kind of hard to be objective, but I really feel like just every album is just its own entity and just so super unique, and not you might get a song or two that reminds you of some other songs, but the feel of the albums, it's always different, and I don't know how they are able to maintain that, and it's I remember Rich talked a lot about when Portnoy was in the band, he was always just had that drive to, okay, we're going to do this. And he had the idea for Octavarium and in the songs, going all the way up an octave, each different key and all that. And how he was kind of sort of missing, he missed that aspect a little bit. And I totally understand that, but I still think even all the new stuff, every new album, it just has its own kind of feel, and it's its own entity. And you can't really just say, well, that sounds like whatever album. I don't buy that. I mean, again, maybe I'm a super fan and too close to it, but I just think everything is just so unique.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you on that. It's really cool because as we talked about, when we were discussing it with Rich, it's really one of the only times, if not the only time, I can think of that Dream Theater wrote a record in answer to the previous one. We had said that Octavarium was kind of like a reaction to the fact that a lot of the fans weren't really as into Train of Thought because it was so heavy, and kind of a departure from, the lighter moments of the band. So they kind of said, okay, we're going to go back to our prog roots and write a prog record. And they had never really done that before. In comparison with a band like Van Halen, where if you kind of look at their discography, like every record was kind of an answer to the previous one. So I completely agree with you. When you say that all the albums are unique, because I mean, take for example my favorite record, Falling Into Infinity. There's no other record like that by far. I mean, Octavarium being what I think is their lightest record. Obviously, there's nothing like that. Train of Thought is completely unique. Systematic Chaos is all over the board. So I think you're spot on with that, man.
It's weird, though, that you referred to it as being light. And I know what you mean, but I feel like maybe you mean light as in like degree of heaviness.
Yes.
But it's a dark album, man. There's some pretty dark stuff on there, when you really analyze it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I just think, as I phrased it when talking to Rich, it doesn't have a lot of sharp edges to it. There's not that banger moment, something like the end of Dark Eternal Night or, a riff like The Mirror or Lie or something like that. There's not really those moments.
That's true.
So, I think if you combine Train of Thought with Octavarium, you get pretty much like the perfect amalgamation of the Dream Theater sound. So.
Yeah, I can see that. Well, speaking of heavy albums, this is going to be short, I guess, because you haven't heard it.
I've heard parts.
The new Megadeth. I listened to half of it, and anyone who's listening, give us your thoughts. I actually think Dave has settled into, and this is going to sound so obvious, but I don't think it's as obvious as it is. He's settled into this guy who's basically the narrator of the whole post-apocalyptic whatever happens,
Right.
That sort of style. And almost every song he's doing like a narration thing, and you're like, it's to the point where you're waiting for it, but I don't mind. I mean, I think he knows what he is at this point, and I made this thing before about Megadeth and Dave know what they are, and I don't know that Metallica, when they're writing new stuff, I don't know that they know what they are anymore. I think they're just kind of hoping something sticks, and they're forcing stuff, and it doesn't take away from any of the previous greatness, but I really like this new Megadeth. I think it's super tight, and his vocals sound great on it. And there's the one where Ice-T even does a little bit of thing on I think it's Night Stalkers. He's got a little riff he does. That's the best song on the album by far, if you've heard that. But there's some other cool stuff though. I mean, I don't know. I think we need a good Megadeth album, and they came up with what I think is a really solid one.
Yeah, I'll agree with you on everything except for the Ice-T thing. I thought that sounded like it was just shoehorned in there. I did not like the Ice-T cameo at all. I was expecting something cooler. That just was. It was, here, Ice-T, say this thing Dave Mustaine would normally say in like a distorted voice. Like,
yeah, it's sort of video, almost video game-ish, but I feel like that's kind of what, some people might think that's hokey, but I think that's kind of what they've almost turned into. It's like I said, it's that dark, apocalyptic soundtrack. Oh, here's Kale's opinion.
Yeah. Yep. Kale says, man, the new Megadeth kind of sucks to my ear. Mission to Mark? What that's not the song.
I think it's Mars.
Mission to Mars is cool though, but the title track was poorly structured. Yeah, that was definitely a weird structure when I listened to that one. And I listened to the 3 singles, so I still have to go through it. I really like the 3 singles. I love the production, and I think you're definitely right. It's like they're kind of in this niche of where they belong now. The other thing I like is that Dave's voice isn't super low. He's doing this the whole time. Like he's finally getting back at least into a mid register, which is cool. So there's a little more melody there. But yeah, I mean, I thought Dystopia was great. From what I've heard of this record, I really like it so far, and I think it's kind of like because I forget did Super Collider? I think Super Collider came out after Endgame, if I'm not mistaken, and they because Endgame was a really good album,
Yeah.
and then you get Super Collider, which was just a bag of trash. And I think they were like, okay, let's not do that. Okay, here comes Dystopia. And you're like, okay, that's a Megadeth record. And now I think Dave's finally like, okay, this is what people want to hear.
Yeah.
So
I think it's and Bob, my coworker Bob, we talk about it too. It's like, okay, when you see a song is from these type of bands anymore, if you see a song is 5.5 minutes, there's got to be a minute in there you can trim off. And this is what I've said about the new Maiden stuff, constantly, like, and that goes against everything from the new album because it's supposed to be this album of all epically long tracks,
no.
But I'll even let them do that. But I think it's more the ones that are 7 minutes that should be, or 6.5 that should be 4.
Yeah,
those make me more mad than if you're going to make a 12-13 minute song. Fine, no one can stop you, right? That's just what you're going to do. But on these ones where you're just like a minute and a half, and like you said, the title track on the Megadeth, like, they're doing that thing where they put those, it's kind of like in the middle of Trust, they got that little slow, almost Beatlesy thing going in some of the stuff. They decide to throw that in out of the middle of nowhere, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm kind of used to it now, so it doesn't totally bother me, but I'm like, do we really need that?
Yeah, Dave, what are you doing? Come on now.
He puts that in there to try to break up to, well, we're going to go back to the same riff again, and it's like, well, maybe just cut a minute off of the song. I don't know.
Or write a different riff, or maybe like we get it's a cool riff, but you can write others.
Yeah. I still wish there'd be a little bit more guitar harmony stuff, because when you hear a lot of cool riffs, you're like, oh man, this would be even better if we had a little bit more, but there's enough sprinkled in from what I've heard so far.
Yeah.
But I think it's cool. I mean, like they're not skimping on album art. The album art's cool. The videos are cool. It's like, it's heavy. Like you said, the production is great. Dave's voice sounds great. So I'm almost like, it would be kind of cool to see it live. The problem is, like, you're just going to get the same set list. You might get 2 songs.
Oh yeah.
And you probably won't even get anything from Dystopia, I bet.
Yeah, and Dave sounds terrible live. I'm not paying for that anymore. Chris Wilson's tuning in. He says, "Hey gents, love the Octavarium deep dive. Thanks, man. That was definitely a good one. I had a blast with Rich." Kale McLeish has given me the discography. Thank you, Kale. He says it went Endgame, then 13. Then Super Collider, then Dystopia, and now Sick, the Dying, and the Dead. Yeah, okay, so I forgot 13. 13 was like, it was good. It wasn't as good as Endgame, but it was like, okay, that's solid. And then Super Collider was just, again, crap. So, but yeah, if you're a Megadeth person and you haven't checked out the new record, Brian's a fan, and I've liked what I've heard. So go check that out, man. Megadeth is usually pretty solid. So one thing that Megadeth does not have, though, Brian, strangely enough, is keyboard parts. And if they do, they're very few and far between. But Dream Theater has a ton of them. And we took it upon ourselves to go through the discography and come up, each of us, with a list of 10 of our favorite keyboard moments. So this should be good, because it was, as we talked about before we jumped on here, it was a little more difficult than I think we expected it to be, because some of the stuff is really subtle. And I know I've got a couple moments that kind of don't last very long, but they stand out to me so much that I could not leave them off of my list.
That's good. That means you understood the assignment. So, yeah, because really, seriously, I wanted like the parts where you're just like, oh man, I love that part. Like it doesn't. I don't care if it's 30 seconds or 2 minutes. Because let's be honest, the majority of, except for the stuff that's kind of piano driven or it's super heavy strings, it's bits and parts here and there, for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got 3 amazing keyboard players. Now, we talked about this before. Did you say your favorite player was Sherinian?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I think I kind of agreed, but now I don't know. Well, I know Rich Wilson said his favorite was Sherinian, for a variety of reasons. But also your favorite album is Falling into Infinity. So
yeah,
it would be dumb if you said someone else, I guess.
Well, I mean, that's let's just get to my list. Then I can just tell you it's every song on Falling Into Infinity minus New Millennium, and then a change of seasons.
Well,
So
good night.
now
We'll
that we've
see
got,
you.
all right, guys, thanks. Brian, why don't you get into your list and I'll just respond. No. Yeah, Derek Sherinian, he obviously makes appearances on my list. Not as many as I think you would expect.
I'm going to write down a number, how many I think you have on there.
Okay.
Well, you sort of gave it away there. All right, I'll write this number down.
No, I was definitely joking about that, but yeah, the thing about Sherinian's playing to me is that it's more of a rock style, it's more fluid, and I think he plays off of John Petrucci more than he plays with him, I think, is what I hear, at least to my ear. And he uses a lot more piano than the other two guys in spots where I don't think Kevin Moore or Jordan Rudess would tend to go to a piano. And I think it sounds really, really cool. So I really enjoy his playing for that aspect.
I can agree with that. I also think Talking Into Infinity has the weirdest mix of Petrucci, and I've brought this up before, where I don't know, the guitar just it doesn't sound the same on any other album. And it doesn't really drive the songs. And I guess that's because of the way Sherinian plays and maybe because he was playing with Sherinian and this was a whole new way of, this is a brand new thing for them. They'd had Kevin Moore nonstop for how many years plus, how many sessions going into the practice room,
Yeah.
countless, this is the way we write, this is the way we play or whatever. And then you bring in a new guy. It's probably like, wow, everything's totally different now. So, but yeah, I can understand where you're coming from there.
Yeah, it's, I mean, Kevin Moore's great. He creates that classic Dream Theater sound that you had on the first three records. And then, Jordan is obviously, more of a liquid tension experiment type of feel to it, more, calculated and a little bit more, a lot more unison playing, I think, busier, I think. But, it's all great. It's all great. I just, Derek Sherinian, his biggest influence is Eddie Van Halen. So me being an Eddie Van Halen honk, hearing that sort of style in his playing, of course, I'm going to react positively to that. So,
yeah,
that's kind of where I go for him. So, all right. So going first, what do you have first on your list there?
So we ranked these 1 to 10. So my number 10, I've got. This is going to seem like I just copied my list from before. I've got Transcending Time.
Okay.
I love that, and we need to get in the habit of saying this word right. I'm guilty of it too. It is Moog. It is not Moog, even though it's spelled Moog.
Yeah. When Rich told us that the other day, I was like, "Yee, oops."
That's yeah, that, and it's actually Neil Peart. It's not.
I was just about to say that. I was like, yeah, there's me walking around going, did you know that Neil Peart did not play the Moog?
No, I said that for years too, but if you're a fan, you're a fan. Hey, it's not a big deal. But yeah, Transcending Time. There's that. It's that Styx 70s, Moog type power riff that comes in after the main guitar starts in the beginning. And does that super. So I call it kind of almost like a majestic, and it's major key, which, there's always the big, it's not a controversy, but they point out like, yeah, we decided to do a whole song in major key, just a happy, fun song. And I love that riff. And he plays that riff. There's a couple versions of that riff that come in like 3 different times. And then there's another time where I think when the guitar comes in on the first or second verse, and then the piano is just doing these accents behind Petrucci's, it's just these really cool chords behind the main riff on guitar. And I love when piano's like accenting stuff like that. I think it fills out a sound, and it sounds great.
Yeah, totally agree, man. Transcending Time is, a pretty interesting song to me. It's like you said, it's all, they tried to be all, major key and stuff like that. So it's cool. And that's definitely something I always hear shades of the self-titled album, which I don't really think of as a keyboard record very much. But yeah, I think that's a good choice. Before I get into mine, I will say I did not rank mine. Kind of like the other episodes where we have favorite moments, I didn't really rank them because I didn't know where to put them.
So you didn't understand the assignment then?
Look, if you're going to put more work into it than you need to, that's on you, dude. So
All right. Well, it's not ranked. That's actually number 5. I lied.
You're just reading them out of order now. Okay.
Right.
So the first thing that I wrote down on my list that came to mind was the solos in Octavarium. The intro part completely defines that song for me, and it also, for me, it's the first thing I think of when I think of the album itself. So I really, really enjoy that. It's crazy that thing goes on for like 4.5 minutes before something else starts really happening. I mean, for them to be able to keep your attention just doing a kind of like an atmospheric, moody keyboard intro is pretty cool. You've got the solo there before the crazy song title lyric part with it's all the kind of wittily stuff. It almost sounds more like a Kevin Moore sound. It's really good. And the other thing that I didn't notice until I was digging into these songs for key parts is that several times in this song, he's playing something under John Petrucci, which is actually the full band part that's coming up next. So he'll be doing one of the parts while John's playing something else, and then all of a sudden the whole band gets into that part. And I had never heard that before, so it was really cool. So I like it. I mean, Octavarium, obviously in an almost 25-minute song, you're going to find something you like, but I really love all the keyboard stuff in that song.
Yeah, the beginning on the continuum we've talked about before, and I also talked before, I don't know if it's the same part you're talking about, it's about 10 minutes in. It's the same sound on Transcending Time. It's that Styx keyboard, lead synth thing that he plays. Some really cool leads on that. And and yeah, I mean it fits that song. I mean that song has 70s written all over it, if any song that they ever did, like Rich said, this is something that should have been on Dark Side of the Moon or The Wall or somewhere in between,
Yep. All right, so what do you have next on your list?
Next on my list, I'm going to Lines in the Sand.
Oh, you prick.
And this will prove your point. Derek Sherinian starts this out with all of those great little squawks and squeals, and bends and stuff on the lead. And it is basically him not trying to sound like, but his influence of Eddie Van Halen. Hey, I'm taking over this keyboard and I want to make it sound like Van Halen's on the guitar here. And just all those little cool things he does for like the first minute and a half almost, I think, of the song. And of course there's great soloing later through it. And it's an awesome song, and they're probably my favorite song on that album anyway. So
yeah, I have that on there, so I'll just make this my next one. I also have Lines in the Sand. Obviously Sherinian is, as I said, my favorite of the 3 keyboard players. And I think this is the song that people think of when they think of Derek Sherinian in Dream Theater. I mean, just that intro part. I mean, it's one of those things that any Dream Theater fan worth their salt, you can hear like 2 notes of that intro riff. And and sometimes even just that kind of low rumbling thing. Yeah. You're like, okay, here it comes, Lines in the Sand. And even just the smallest tease, and those of us who like that song and love that record are like, yeah, here it comes. So it's super definitive, and he's got all of his different sounds represented. There's a lot of piano on there, the dirty organ that he's pretty famous for using a ton of. That's right, I said Derek Sherinian uses his dirty organ. But yeah, I mean, this is basically, I would say, kind of like the signature Derek Sherinian song, and I love it. It's one of the first things I think of when I think of Falling Into Infinity. And it's just a jamming song. And the keys are always doing something interesting, and it changes here and there from sound to sound. And I really like that. So I definitely have Lines in the Sand on my list as well, which of course should not be a surprise given the fact that, it's my favorite record. Yeah, and it's kind of a signature track from that record. So yeah. All right. So what do you have next on your list?
I'm going to stay with Falling Into Infinity. The best song that Paul McCartney never wrote on the piano.
God damn you, Hendrickson! Man.
I mean, if this doesn't sound like it should have been on a Wings album, at least. I mean, this is so Beatlesy, it's not even funny, which is good.
What the hell did you do? Just go listen to songs that are obvious and write them down? At least my choices with this is because it's my favorite damn album.
Right.
You're just like, oh, this is all piano. I think I'm going to pick Anna Lee.
Yeah.
You didn't even try. You said that I didn't get the damn assignment. You didn't even try. And you're a keyboard player.
You pick ones that had all bass in them instead. You pick the ones with keyboards.
Right. I'm naming drum parts like, idiot, that's not a keyboard.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
anyways,
man, what
Anna Lee.
a beautiful melody that the Breeze sings over that. And I know it's one of your favorite songs of his. And it's just one of those sit down on. I'd love to know, like, a song like that. Did Sherinian have that before, or was this whole album just totally spontaneous? Like, okay, we just get in a room and we just write, or did he have any of these ideas before, or where did something like that come from? Because it's just so Paul McCartney Beatles-ish, like, and then James' voice just floats on top of it like perfectly.
Yeah, I think this was before the whole change in the writing style of them just getting in the studio and not having anything written. They just get in the studio and write for a few months and then record it. Gail McLeish. My favorite keyboard part is the intro to Honor Thy Father. Nice. Yeah, so I think, he may have had this laying around and kind of presented it to the band, I guess. But I don't know that for sure. So if I'm wrong on that, please feel free to correct me, somebody in the chat, or send us an email at talkingintoinfinity@gmail.com if I'm really screwing that up. But yeah, I obviously have Anna Lee on my list as well. I completely love this song, especially within the context of Dream Theater. Like you said, it's the best song Paul McCartney never wrote. This one is really cool to me because it's one of those rare Dream Theater songs that you could just have the main instrument and one vocal, and it will still stand on its own. You're not gonna miss out on the stuff that isn't there, and they don't have very many of those at all. And I think the song has tons of feel, like you said. The vocals got a great melody to it, and I really like how James's voice is dry and really, really intimate during the parts where it's just him and Sherinian playing. So the key change is really cool to me at the end. I like how they kind of build it a little bit. I'm always a big fan of that, where starts out simple and kind of gets a little more complicated. I love this song. It's always been a standout to me because when I first heard this record, I was like, what the hell is this? It was cool. It was a really, really cool kind of left turn. And I was like, this is the least Dream Theater thing I've ever heard him do, but this is awesome. So I'm really a big fan of this one.
Oh, great. Now Kale's going to disagree. I disagree to the Beatles' influence. It's way more Elton John to me. Well, Elton John wasn't influenced by the Beatles at all.
Oh, geez, man.
That's okay, Kale. I can understand that.
Poor Kale. Be nice to him.
Agree with you. Yeah, we got to be nice to him. He's bringing up some good points, actually. He brought up the keyboard part for the solo for Scarred.
Yeah, he actually said, here's one for Kevin Moore, the solo from Scarred.
I can't even place that because it's a heavier song.
Yeah. And also, like,
I'd have to hear it right now to know for sure.
I actually went back and listened to Awake to see if there was some stuff on there, and there is. But man, when you're trying to really listen to the keyboard parts, you can really tell that he was kind of checked out a little bit, because there's not nearly as much going on, I think, as he had done on the previous two albums. So it's still great. And I think you would, have to know what's going on within the band at the time to really kind of pick that up, I think. But it's kind of glaring when you look at it in the historical context of what was going on.
Should we catch Chris Moran up to speed? Hey, guys, what's up? What are we talking about today? Chris, we're doing our favorite keyboard moments throughout Dream Theater's history.
Actually, today's topic is, yeah. Today's topic is Brian ripping off my list because he's too lazy to do his own homework. So that's not really the case, but we've already had a couple in common. So The next one on my list, that was going to be Annalise. So you get to go again. And I swear, if you take another one off of my list, man, I'm dumping you out.
This one's not on your list, I guarantee.
Okay.
We just did this album, and I think this was the song I said I had the most new appreciation for. These Walls.
Wow. Okay.
And if you were listening, I love when I like just repeat what I said before and then tell you that I'm repeating it. That's like double repetition.
You're terrible at selling prior episodes.
Yeah, no,
you don't have to go listen to it because now I'm just going to tell you.
Yeah, I'm really bad at that. Yeah, I love a song which is super rare where the synth drives the song and not the guitar, and the main synth, power synth drives this one. And I love just a little subtle, dumb little thing before you get to that kind of clean guitar and the vocals come in. It does that where it bends 2 octaves on the keyboard. It's just so subtle. I love those little nuancy kind of things. To me, they just add so much to a song. It just, I don't know. It's just such a palette, like, I don't want to say cleanser, but it just gives you that feel of it. I don't know. I've always loved like when you do a bend on a Moog type sound like that. And this one, they're not only doing it 1 octave, they do 2 octaves on it. And it's right after they've done all the little lead parts anyway. And it just fits perfectly to me.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. This is one of those things where, Petrucci's doing a pretty simple broken chord thing in the verses, and the piano really adds depth underneath it. It's kind of one of those things where I think this would be one of those songs where you don't really notice the keys as much, but if you took it off, you'd be like, oh man, boy, is something missing here. So I would agree with you. I think that's a good pick, man. And as I said, previously on Sunday, I'm glad you're coming over to my side of things in terms of loving These Walls, because that song is criminally underrated. I love it. So Chris Moran in the chat says, here's one from Train of Thought, Jordan Rudess keyboard solo from Endless Sacrifice. What do you think of that solo? Well, Chris, I'll tell you what I think. I think that that's actually the next one on my list, oddly enough.
Nice.
So kind of like Lines in the Sand, where Derek Sherinian kind of, pulls out everything from his bag of tricks. Jordan kind of does that in this song to me. He's got like the real feeling-ish piano stuff, that, what they call it, the dirty pig rhythm sound that kind of like is almost like mimicking a rhythm guitar. He's got that atmospheric soundtrack stuff. It's just got all of Jordan's signature stuff on it. And again, Train of Thought is another record where I don't think there's a lot of stuff that you can't really pick up on the keys, honestly, because I mean, you have to kind of listen for the keys because of that rhythm guitar thing that he does, where he doubles John as if it's 2 guitars going. And it's kind of hard to hear sometimes, at least for me. And I'm kind of an idiot, so maybe that's why. but
yeah, and unless it's going into an obvious solo that you can hear, I agree. We've talked about it before. They really are buried on a lot of the stuff, and that was kind of on purpose. It's just sort of the way that album sort of unfolded.
Yeah. But I think on this song, Jordan kind of shines. Yeah. And if he was, I think it's a little buried in the mix, to your point. So I think if he was a little bit louder, I think we'd get a lot more love than it does as kind of like one of the more standout tracks in at least in Jordan's tenure of the band. So I really like this one, and it was a pleasant surprise for me to kind of unearth this and be like, man, there's a lot going on there. So
you stumped me for sure. I would not see that one on your list.
Well, I mean, Train of Thought is not one of those records where you look at and go, man, I bet you there's a really cool, there's a really cool keyboard part to be found here. Like, and they're there, but it's very subtle. So, what do you have next on your list?
Okay. The rest of my list is, well, especially this is so Captain Obvious.
Oh, no.
I've got Count of Tuscany. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I was going to go with that. And I was like, you know what? I think a lot more guitar when I think of this song than I do keyboard. So, all right. So you have a Count of Tuscany. Okay.
Yeah, I mean that first synth solo, the Moog, that that little wheelie wee thing, goes on for like a minute and a half or whatever.
Yep.
After Petrucci's done his first opening solo, I love that. Like, and then after that, they do. There's a guitar keyboard harmony, which leads into Petrucci doing a little bit of his own. I think before the verse starts. And then my favorite part of this song is actually you have to go to YouTube to really hear it when they isolate the keyboards.
Mm-hmm.
It's the very end. It's these arpeggiated string parts, and it's like 30 seconds before the end goes. I mean, it sounds like a giant symphony playing all these parts. And I was listening extremely carefully when we were at the show to see if you could hear it, and they're still buried too much. But if you isolate them, you hear these things just going. I mean, it just sounds like angels flying overhead. It's like this. It's these awesome string arpeggios, and just the main. I mean, the main riff on the strings on this is it's just one of the most beautiful melodies of all time. And somehow, like, I don't know, you're playing that, and then whatever Petrucci's playing under it, that heavy guitar thing that's kind of it's a suspended thing. It keeps kind of pedaling on itself, but you got that melodic motif on top of that. It just, I don't know, it's just one of the most beautiful melodies I've ever heard. And that part at the end, like when we're done with the show here, I'll show you the link or something, and you'll hear it and it'll be like, oh my God, it sounds
Sure.
like a soundtrack, but it's a little bit too buried when they play it live and in the mix, but it's in there. But yeah, I gotta go with that.
Okay. Yeah, like I say, to me, Count of Tuscany is one of those songs I always think guitar first. Obviously there's all that atmospheric stuff in the middle, and all the kind of, that extended middle part that's, but there's definitely some cool stuff going on, and I have not noticed the part that you mentioned. So yeah, when we're done with this, we'll have to pull that up. You'll have to show it to me, because I want to hear this, man.
Like,
I wish you had it now. I would like play it, but
oh yeah, that would be cool. I almost want to say that this to me is their perfect balance of guitar and keyboard. I don't know. It's just I know, geez, shocker, I'm on here gushing about Count of Tuscany. It gets so old, I'm sure, for people.
So
it's a great song.
From now on, our list, all of our lists are going to be, mine are going to be these different things, and yours is going to be 9 things and Count of Tuscany. No matter what it is.
Oh my God.
Coolest Dream Theater song titles: 9 songs and Count of Tuscany.
Yeah.
So the next thing that I have on my list, and I'm wondering if I might not be stealing one from you for a change, but I have the barroom piano part in the Dance of Eternity. That was another one of those moments where the first time I heard that record, I was like, what the hell is that? And it always stands out to me. That is one of the keyboard moments in the entire band's catalog for me, because there's nothing like it. And it's just such a cool, that ragtime, I think it's called. I'm terrible with like the terminology, but
Yeah.
it's, man, that ragtime piano in the middle of a Dream Theater song. You go, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
And then of course, soon after comes that insane bass solo thing. But yeah, it was just such a what the hell kind of a moment for me when I heard that the first time. And I always think of that when I think of Scenes from a Memory. And like I said about a couple other songs, I think that's kind of what dictated most of the choices on my list here, is that when I think of a record, what musical parts stand out the most to me? Like what comes to mind? And that's kind of like a recurring theme on my list here. And that ragtime part is definitely, right up there, if not the top.
Yeah, it's got to be something that you feel. It's like,
Yeah,
it's like, well, that sounds cool, or that's great musicianship. Like, you got to actually feel it, and you feel it because you're like, you find yourself, you replay the song, or sometimes you're like, literally, sometimes in Count of Tuscany, I'll be like, all right, I'm just gonna go back to this part here again. I want to hear it again. I mean, right. I'll do that in a lot of these songs, and yeah, Dance of Eternity is on my list. I'll save my comments for it until we get to it.
Oh no!
Yeah, it's on.
Oh no! You could just say it. If we're doubling up, you might as well just get to it now.
All right, I actually have it as number 12. I'm doing 12 songs now.
Oh my Lord!
No, I have it as number 2 on my list. And not even
Really?
just for that part. I mean, the whole song is just like, I don't know, it's just amazing musically on keyboard, and that stands out the most, that it is ragtime, like 1920s, like you're in like a speakeasy or something,
Yeah.
like, and and it's played at like 300 miles an hour, and it fits perfectly for the whole idea of that concept album of flashbacks through time and stuff like that, and makes sense now that we had Adam on to explain some of the concept to
Yeah.
us. But at the time when you're listening to it, you're like, wait, where the hell did this come from? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
you knew it was sort of about, obviously it says scenes from a memory, so it's about the past, but it makes sense more in the context of it now.
I never even thought about that until you just mentioned it. And again, I am the idiot of the two of us, so no surprise there. So yeah, that makes total sense. I never even thought about that. The whole, it's kind of like a 1920s piano thing, and they're just talking about stuff in the past. That's cool, man. I never even thought about that. Kale McLeish says, how about the solos from Beyond This Life, though? I think those, along with the ragtime piano and Dance of Eternity, really solidified that he was the right choice for Dream Theater. You can't really find like a bad Jordan moment. It's hard for me to say, Kale, because I think the whole concept of Scenes from a Memory kind of proved that he was the right choice, because he comes into the band and his first record is this epic concept album, and he's orchestrating the whole thing. And as great as Derek Sherinian and Kevin Moore are, I don't think they could have come in and just right off the bat, if ever, just scored an entire concept record. That just seems like something that Jordan has that ability for, that I think not many people have.
Well, and also, I don't know that they're capable of collaborating in that manner due to egos, and I'm not saying that in a negative way. I just think based on their own personal musical tastes and behaviors and what we know about them, that that ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, right. All right, so since we both had that one on our list, I will go to the next one on my list. I have the unison solo in Metropolis. So obviously, Images and Words is filled with a ton of great keyboard stuff. Kevin Moore's magnum opus, if you will. But that unison solo in Metropolis, that was the first time that I really kind of opened my ears and went, okay, now I really know what the keyboards are for in this band. I, up to that point, had never heard a band do that before. So that was really the first mind-blowing moment that I had in terms of the keyboards in my experience with Dream Theater. So that's always going to be kind of like a nostalgic thing for me. And let's be honest, at its core, it's just a badass part. When you hear two guys just shredding side by side like that, you're like, what the hell, man? So I think it was a statement moment on the record. I think people that listened to it were kind of like, holy shit, what is that? And to me, it's one of the best keyboard parts that they have. Again, going back to what I said before, this is something I always think about whenever I think about Images and Words. And even my mom, like, she wanted to listen to Dream Theater a little bit to hear what I was all about, or what I was really into. Like, why are you talking about this band so much? And I said, okay, you got to hear this song. And when the solo came in, she says, what the hell are they doing? I said, that's keyboard and guitar. And she said, someone can play keyboards like that? And I said, yeah, that's what I said. So I always have that funny memory with it too. So yeah, I have the unison solo in Metropolis. What is next on your list?
My next list showed up on our Dream set list, Lost Not Forgotten.
Oh, very cool. Okay.
Massive piano intro.
Yeah.
And you'll be shocked to hear this. I went back the other day and listened to Dramatic Turn of Events, and it is probably their best album ever, no matter what anyone says. They're wrong. No, I love that. I love that intro, man, on the piano. It's so good. Like,
okay,
sets up that whole song, and then it's like when you start a song out like that and then you get the heavy guitar come in, it's just, it balances things out. You know, you're
Mhm.
getting the yin and the yang there, and you're not over indulging in one style there. You know, you're mixing and matching, and that's really, that's the essence of Dream Theater, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Full disclosure, I am not overly familiar with this because the songs on this record tend to blend together for me a lot. So I would have to go back and try to listen to this one because I do get it confused. I get a lot of these songs confused. But I'm going to take your word for it because it is your favorite record and you are a keyboard player. So you definitely know more than I do on this one. So that's all you on that. So next on my list, I have the Continuum solo in the outro of The Dark Eternal Night. And you know the Continuum makes a few appearances on my list here. And that solo, I think, is one that people don't really talk about a lot because of the riff that it's played over. You know, they're doing that, and it's just that dirge that they're doing. And then you got Jordan just riffing on the Continuum. And, you know, they talk about this in the documentary that's on that bonus disc that comes with Systematic Chaos if you got the deluxe edition. And they didn't have video footage of Jordan playing it because that was in a kind of like a writing session, and it was like a first take, like kind of a jam, and they liked it so much that they kept it. So they weren't filming. So that's literally the first time he ever did that. He was just riffing on it. They're like, that's amazing, we're keeping it. So it's a complete one-take wonder, which is so cool to me that he just, you know, absolutely crushed it, you know, that first time. And it's cool. It's weird. I mean, it's such a perfect, you know, outro to that song, a perfect closing to that song. It's just a long, dark, weird, wonky tune. And then you've got all this crazy noodling on the Continuum. Not very melodic. It's more noisy, I would say, but man, it fits great, I think, at the end of that song.
Yeah, there's a ton of great moments on Systematic Chaos, and I'll spoiler alert here. I actually didn't pick any from that album. That's how hard this was.
There's a lot of great moments on that. I didn't pick any.
I know. Well, I mean, you know, it would have been super easy to you know, Presence of Enemies one, but
Yep.
Chris Moran says, here's one from View from the Top of the World, Answering the Call.
Okay.
This keyboard solo on that song is really good and heavy, dark, and a progressive keyboard solo. Yeah, we talked about Answering the Call. Wasn't that the one I said I wanted to throw in my set list? I was really got a new appreciation for that one.
Yeah. It's weird on that one too, because that song has always stuck out to me on the new record, and you haven't talked about it much. I kind of thought you would be into that song more. So I guess not.
No, I am. It's just there's so many damn songs. It's just hard to like.
It's growing on you.
Yeah.
It's growing on you. Okay. Well, what is the next selection on your list?
Oddly enough, this showed up today on Jordan Rudess' Facebook page. He's showing you bits and parts of About to Crash. He's playing it live in his studio.
Really? Okay.
And yeah, it's pretty cool. I think to get the whole thing, you got to be a member. So that, I don't know, it's like a minute of it he's playing or whatever. And yeah, I mean, what a great, you know, kind of, I guess, to Cale's point, sort of Elton John-ish, maybe a little bit of Billy Joel in there, but rock piano as well. Like, I don't know, just a great, awesome piano thing to start out a song with. I mean, I don't know, maybe probably this most famous piano thing he does that Jordan does. I would argue there's one more famous piano moment, I think, by the band, but that's coming up.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, About to Crash. I mean, what can you say about that?
Well, I can say a lot about it. I can say that it's a beautiful piece of music and it's a great choice. And I'm kind of surprised I left that one off because I really like that one too. So, I mean, you're spot on. It's such a great song melodically. It's a perfect lead in to, you know, the 6 Degrees Suite. It's not a perfect lead into the Mystery of Lost Souls, as we've joked about previously. But yeah, no, that's a great selection, man, because that's a really, really great part. And, you know, kind of like when Derek Sherinian did it, I really like when Jordan kind of uses piano. It just sounds great. I mean, and I like when it's used in spots you wouldn't normally picture a piano going. And this is not one of those times, but it does kind of drive the song, which to me is a little bit of an interesting choice because you're coming off of this like 8-minute overture of nothing but like classical music. And you're thinking, okay, on a record that tends to be a little more on the heavy side with 6 Degrees, you're kind of expecting more that you don't really get that. You get kind of like this lighter, more, you know, poppy, for lack of a better term, a poppier side of things. And the piano kind of drives all that. So I thought that was cool.
I still want to know if anyone else has noticed. It's the riff for Jeff Beck's Freeway Jam, basically. I'll have to play that for you later because you don't know what I'm talking about. I want to know if anyone else hears that in there. It's pretty. I don't know. It's fairly obvious to me. The main melodic motif is kind of from that. Now, whether or not he got that from that, I have no idea. But hey, Cale McLeish, should I feel bad about picking Wait for Sleep? Well, speaking of Wait for Sleep, John, my number 3 on my list is Kevin Moore's brilliant Wait for Sleep.
All right.
I think it is the seminal piano thing for all Dream Theater albums. I mean, that melody comes in, you know immediately what it is. I mean, it's just a beautiful, haunting, dark, but amazing song.
What are you gonna? I mean, dude, you and I have actually performed this one.
Yes, I mean, if that's what you want to call it.
I thought that one sounded good. I thought we sounded good. I'm gonna
did sound good.
self-promote a little bit. I thought it sounded good. I mean, especially you, because it's, you know, weird time signature and stuff. But yeah, I mean, this again. I think this is one that was a little obvious for me. I didn't want my list to look like, you know, like I joked with you earlier. What, you just think of songs that were only a piano and just go with that? Like, but by the way, real quick side note, I just saw you drinking a beer that cost more than $1.49.
I'm
Wow.
Yingling. I have to have like beer over here if we have like a pool party. Like, no one else is going to drink like Ice House, you know. And I don't want them drinking my Four Loko, so.
That's hilarious.
So yeah, I have to have some like reasonable beers for like, you know, the father-in-law and things like that.
And let me guess, you charge for them.
Well, I wouldn't say charge. I mean, I kind of have a mental note of how much that each person has, you know, drank or eaten.
You're like that'll be a quarter. That way, if you sell 6, you could refill your ice. Your Bud
I saved
ice.
a lot of money on food when you didn't show up last Sunday. So let's put it that way.
That's what everybody tells me.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So back to Wait for Sleep. Yeah, it's beautiful, and you know, that was the first time we had heard something like that from Dream Theater. Something short and to the point and plaintive and still a little progressive, but it's got that great melody, and it's like you said, it's such a beautiful sounding song. I love it. And again, the only reason it didn't make my list is because I kind of figured you would have it, and I wanted to avoid obvious stuff since I knew that, you know, that would kind of make it look like I wasn't trying. But it was definitely strongly considered. So
there's an interesting one. Chris Moran, In the Name of God, keyboard solo.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Again, for me, Train of Thought is something I always associate guitar with more than keyboards. So, you know, that one, I listened to Train of Thought and nothing really grabbed me enough to make my list. But it's definitely a damn good solo. So I'll give you that, Chris. One thing that I actually think is a great solo, and I think it's a great solo throughout, and I'm probably going to be stealing this from you. I hate to do this, but I have to. It's my turn next. That would be one of the best closing tracks in Dream Theater history from 1994's Awake record. I have Space Divest.
I knew this was going to show up.
Or as you called it, a gorilla fart. And speaking of gorilla farts, don't miss our annual fan hangout episode on Friday, December 30th, where I will be drinking Gorilla Farts in front of everybody again, live on camera. Yeah, this is. I mean, I've said all there is to say about Space Divest in the past, but I love how weird it is, and the sound of the keyboards is just great, and it's just got this weird, wonky vibe that I totally love, and it's way driven by the keys. So, if Kevin Moore was going to go out, he went out with a very interesting, weird, what the hell is that kind of bang. So I love it. I know you're not a fan. I know most of the listeners are not a fan of that song, but I love it. I love it. It's the redheaded stepchild of the Dream Theater community, but one of my favorite sons. So
I don't mind the keyboard part, actually. It's just the subject matter, the lyrics. So.
See, even that doesn't bother me because it's so unique. It's strange. I can never fault anybody for saying those lyrics. What the hell is that? I'll never fault anybody for that. But,
I will. I have no problem. This is Dream Theater. You can do way better than that. Come on, guys.
The dude was quitting the band. What do I think he's going to do? He probably didn't even have it written. They say that he had the whole thing written and brought it to the band, but he probably was like, yeah, I got this music. Oh, we need words. Kevin, what do you got? And he's reading a magazine. He's just looking at some chick in a Space Divest. He goes, oh, God. Here. Here's what I got.
They should have tied an anchor around him while he was wearing a Space Divest and thrown him off of a boat. Now that would have been a better scenario for a lyrical topic lyrically. It's about a guy who writes a terrible song lyrically, and the rest of the band kills him at sea.
Yeah, with the anchor. Couldn't swim with that vest if he wanted to.
Like a mermaid finds him and carries him away. Like the abyss or something.
Oh, that song is always such a hot mess when we bring it up.
It is.
All right, so I only have 2 left. So what do you have left on your list? What is your next one?
Well, we already used my number 2. I had Dance of Eternity.
Okay. Are you already your number 1?
Yeah, that's how quick we burned through these.
All right. Well, let me do one more.
All right.
And then we'll each do our last one. So I have Only a Matter of Time from When Dream and Day Unite. That riff to start out, well, it's so majestic and just big, and obviously they brought that song back on live at Budokan, and it's just such a massive sounding thing, and the keyboards throughout, like Kevin Moore really he does some great stuff on that song. So I really like the song. I think it's a great closer for the record. But I just think that Kevin Moore doesn't get enough credit for how much stuff he's really doing on that song, and it's always been one of my closet favorites. Where do you stand on that one? Because I know When Dream and Day Unite is kind of a record that is growing on you a little as time passes.
Yeah, if I would pick something off of there, I would pick that. I can see why you did. I mean, like we said, that it does the sort of foreshadowing of what's coming on Images and Words, so I can totally see that. Speaking of Chris Moran, Images and Words, Under a Glass Moon keyboard solo. Yeah, I almost want to say this, that every solo Kevin Moore does on Images and Words is like its own musical thing that you can almost hum, right? It's like, yeah, it's very defined, and it resolves I don't want to term as easily, but it's like a Baroque, it's almost a Bach type thing where things just kind of, you sort of know where it's going to go and where it ends up, but it's super melodic. And I think when it comes to actual solos, he's my favorite player because of that. And that's why that's just such an incredible album, because of the way it's constructed. And it seems like every note is thought out like to the T and just perfectly placed,
Yeah. Well, I think, what I said earlier about listening back to Awaken, you can hear kind of how disengaged he is. I think when you listen to Images and Words, you can hear how engaged he was during that period of the band's history. He was really just firing on all cylinders and was such a massive contributor to the success of that record. And to your point, the solos are just completely on point. Every single one of them. I mean, you could literally just bring up all of them and say, here's my favorite keyboard moments. Like they're just so well thought out and just perfectly phrased for the song that they appear in. So yeah, I completely agree with you on that. I completely agree with you on that. So, all right. So what is your number one?
Well, sticking with a song you actually did earlier and sticking with Images and Words off of Chris Moran, I have Metropolis.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know how you can, you know, you get tired of talking about it. I don't know what there is to say about it anymore at this point. You know, you did a pretty good job of like this whole bag of tricks is on display there. I mean, just from you get chills when you just hear the opening stuff, you know, on that, you know, like the back of your neck, like every sound is just, I don't know. He took for probably a very low keyboard budget, you know, in terms of what they were working with production wise and stuff. Like, I don't know how, like, it doesn't sound dated. You know what I mean? It's not like, oh, this sounds like 80s keyboard or 90s keyboard or whatever.
Yeah.
It just sounds like he had the perfect sound for these songs, and they seem timeless to me. And I don't know if I can say that necessarily about all of their stuff, but for all of his note choices and sound designs on Images and Words, they're timeless, and I don't know, they fit perfect.
Yeah. No, I agree with you on the sound because, you know, you and I, you know, did that discography discussion episode about Symphony X. And one of my complaints was, I was like, did this guy ever buy a new keyboard? Like, you know, they released the first album in like the mid 80s and it's this totally mid 80s sounding keyboard, which, okay, it's the times. But then as the band progresses sound wise and gear wise, this guy's still using that same damn 80s keyboard. So I'm like, what is this trash? So, you know, to your point, I agree. You know, the Dream Theater stuff with Kevin Moore, you know, Kevin Moore stuff on Images and Words, it does hold up, and it doesn't sound like that terrible tinny Casio 80s keyboard sound, man. It's a powerful, just driving sound, and it blends perfectly with Petrucci's guitar. And, you know, he's got a great piano sound as well and stuff like Surrounded and whatnot. And yeah, I'm definitely with you. It doesn't sound dated. It holds up extremely well. And I think it sounds fantastic. So I think that's a good choice. And I'm going to take credit right now. I was guessing that your number one was going to be Metropolis, and you did not let me down. So my number one, which is not really a number one, but the last one that I have on my list, I have A Change of Seasons. So this one for me is pretty much on my list because this is the first time that we heard Derek Sherinian. And I always thought that it was really, really interesting because when I got a hold of this, I was like, wow, that sounds different. Like, I wasn't aware of the history of the band at this point. I was really just digging my toes into the sand. Like, so I did notice that it sounded a lot different to me than Images and Words and Awake. I was like, wow, this is different. Like, this is interesting. And I love what he brought to the table because, you know, A Change of Seasons was written with, you know, it was supposed to be included on the Images and Words record, and the label wouldn't do a double record. So we would have had this song with Kevin Moore, and I think Kevin Moore's version sounds, you know, I mean, it's close to the Sherinian stuff, obviously, but something about Sherinian's style just brings out something a lot different in the song itself, and I really, really like that. And I immediately was drawn to Sherinian's style. I'm like, what, man, this sounds different from what they've done before. I really dig this. So maybe that's why, you know, the subsequent record, Falling Into Infinity, is my favorite because I just really enjoyed how he played off of John Petrucci. And it's one of the things in going back and listening to the key parts that and again, this is just to my ear. I'm not nearly as well trained in music as you are. But to me, it sounded like Sherinian almost played off of John Petrucci more so than he played with him. And I think that's what kind of sets it apart for me. It adds a little bit extra layer that the other guys kind of don't do because they're more blending together with the rest of the band, which is great. And it sounds perfect, but I kind of like how Derek does something a little bit different and a little bit off the wall compared to what Kevin Moore and Jordan Rudess are doing. So for that reason, I chose A Change of Seasons because that's always kind of been like, it's cool to hear this change in sound for the band. You know, it kind of freshens things up. So I really like that. And I know you're not the biggest Change of Seasons fan, so maybe you'll have the
So
same take I did on your Dramatic Turn song.
no, so question is there? I'm unaware of a lot of things. We know this. Is there a version of Kevin Moore playing on it then too that you can get or hear?
Yeah, there's I don't remember. I don't think there's anything that was like an official release, but I know that on live bootlegs and stuff like that, they played it live a few times.
Okay.
So you can hear them playing it with him.
And how much did he have involvement in the original writing of it? Do you know? I'm just curious.
I mean, like I say, it was written along with the images and words stuff, and they were prepared to release it, record it, and release it with images. So it was ready to roll. I mean, they just needed to have Prater produce it or do some edits to it. And
I just wondered what if he was responsible like for the main like vocal melodies or anything or the lyrics or something.
Oh, yeah, that I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kale's with us. He says, "A Change of Seasons, Inevitable Summer." I love that solo. Yeah, I mean it's like I say, our first taste of Derek Sherinian, and he just adds something different that I thought was really, really cool. And Change of Seasons itself was something we had never heard. Like, holy crap, a 24-minute song. What the hell is that? So,
yeah.
The whole thing was just kind of a left turn in and of itself. So.
No, that I knew you'd have this on your list, and yeah, there's a lot of cool moments in it. I don't know. I probably got to go back to this one again. I've come around on a lot of these, so we'll see if I can come around on this one.
It's definitely a bit to chew when you're like, I got to go back to this. Let me get through 23 minutes, some odd seconds, whatever it is. Kale's right, by the way. He also says, "Thank God that images and words version wasn't released. The version we have now is so much better. Lyrics were refined, and the 7-string adds so much." Yeah, I agree with you, Kale. Definitely the stuff that you'll hear on the bootlegs is not the finished version.
Well, I'd like to hear it just because I love the images and words production. So I'd love to hear that song with the images and words production, but I guess that's not possible because then that would mean it would sound more Kevin Moore-ish.
Yeah,
right?
and I mean you can hear it with Kevin Moore live, as I said, so you'll get that
Right.
kind of sound to it. But
Right.
yeah, no, this was cool, man. Like I said, it was more difficult than we both thought. I thought this would be easy for you. I mean, you're the one that said, "Hey, why don't we do this?" And I figured it's because you had all these ideas, and we got on, and you're like, "Man, this is harder than I thought."
Well, I still think we could do a second episode about it. But let's eliminate these, but we can talk about that later.
Part 2.
That's right.
Yeah. It was cool to listen to it, the songs in this fashion, though, because I don't generally do that. I'm not sitting here digging in going, okay, what's the keyboard doing? What's the, I listen to things as a whole, and if something jumps out, I'm like, ooh, that's cool. I'm kind of more of a holistic listener, I guess, in that sense. I don't usually kind of nitpick part by part. So
I'm the same way. Like I said, I just if I hear something that grabs me, it grabs me. It doesn't matter what it is, I mean, maybe I focus a little more on the keyboards, just because I'm curious what they're going to do. Like once, I guess for lack of a better word, okay, once the song starts and you hear the guitar riff, you know right away what the guitar is going to do, right?
Yeah.
It's not. I'm not saying it's predictable or anything like that, but you get an idea, but you never know exactly what the keyboards are going to do to either support this or bounce off of it. Like you said, you just don't really know. Sometimes you can be halfway into a song and still not exactly know what else is Jordan going to do at this point. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, totally. And it's always interesting. That's what's cool. Is like it again. We kind of touched on this earlier a little bit, but they have a lot of moments, I think, where if you take the keyboards out, the song really changes, but you don't really notice that they're there. So you'll be listening to a song, okay, that's cool, but then you're not thinking, oh, listen to that keyboard part, listen to that keyboard part, listen to that keyboard part. But then if you were to remove it, you'd go, hey, what the hell? Why does this sound so different? And I love that. It's kind of like, when I was playing in one of my original bands and we worked with a producer and he made some subtle tweaks to one of our songs And if you were in the room when he was making those changes, you're like, oh, that's really small. What? And I'm thinking, what difference is this going to make? But we did it. We're paying this guy money. He knows better than we do. And I'm like, this doesn't seem like it's going to really do anything. But then when you play it, and especially when you listen to it back, like the original version versus his version, it makes this monstrous difference. And I love the subtlety of it. And I think all three of the players really kind of did that extremely well. But just kind of like in their own way.
So when you did that, was it mostly removing your vocals then, or?
You know what? Why do I even bother? Look, man, you were in a band called Bang. Don't be talking to me about this crap. What kind of band name is that? What was Boom? Was Sock? What were you watching an episode of the 1960s Batman show?
I fully admit to it. You're the one that said it wasn't as bad as I said it was.
You're just pissed because you didn't want the band to be called Bang. You wanted Thwack, and they wouldn't go along with it.
No, I wanted like PFFF. Oh, wait, that's more like a fart, I think. We went way off the rails here.
Oh my gosh. This is almost turning into like an episode of my nerd show. Wow.
David Michael, Dreams Theater has always had amazing keyboard players. Yes. They have.
Yes, we agree with that.
Hulks.
Nice. So Kale is telling you, says, Brian, you can hear a live version of this version of A Change of Seasons in the live in NHC? NYC, I think he means live. Is it? Oh, well, live in NHC NYC 93 release from Lost Not Forgotten. And I think there's a different singer auditioning with it in the new Images and Words demos release. And that I didn't know, Kale. Okay. So, yeah. So that was cool, dude. That was cool. That was a good dig into parts of Dream Theater. I've never really taken the time to listen to this in this detailed of a fashion. It was interesting. It was cool.
Yeah, it was fun, man. I enjoyed that.
So obviously we got a lot of stuff coming up on the show. We've got a few episodes planned out here. As I said in the intro, quick show note, our next show is going to be in 2 weeks, but it will be on Wednesday, not on Thursday. So normally we would be coming to you live on September 22nd, but it's actually going to be September 21st. So that week is going to be a Wednesday. I have Thursday night football tickets to go watch my Browns hopefully beat the shit out of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I'll be down at First Energy Stadium, Cleveland Browns Stadium, whatever. So I'll be doing that. So we will be on Wednesday that week, but 2 weeks after that, we're back to our usual Thursday. And that one is going to be our deep dive into Van Halen's 1984 record. It's actually on October 6th, which is the 2-year anniversary of the unfortunate passing of Eddie Van Halen. So we figured we would do one of our off episodes and dig into my favorite band, Van Halen. Dream Theater is a very, very close second, but Van Halen is my favorite. And I actually have something cool that I'm going to play as an outro to that show. So I'll have to tell you about that off air, but I got something I'm going to add to the end of our show that night. And again, we do have the annual fan hangout show coming up on Friday, December 30th. So on that show, anything goes. And it's usually kind of a long form show, but everybody can jump on at any time. We're going to do it again at our usual time, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And one of the things we like to do is if you guys want to get on air and co-host with us, you can shoot us an email at talkingintoinfinity@gmail.com. And you guys are more than welcome to jump on camera and talk about whatever you want. And we can just have an awesome music roundtable. You can co-host Talking Into Infinity with us, man. We'd love to make you guys a part of the show as much as we can, and the fan hangout's always a good time. As I said, Brian, I'm going to be doing gorilla farts that night, so I hope you can come up with one of your awesome specialty cocktails, which, as my father would say, the stuff that you drink would gag a maggot. So,
yeah, I will. I will have something awesome.
Yep. Chris Moran wants to know what's next, guys. We have not chosen a topic for the next episode yet, actually. So we're gonna figure that out, and then we'll release it online. So keep an eye on our social media channels. How many? Well, we actually don't have a lot. I was trying to think, how many do we have? But we only got the 2. We got Twitter and Facebook.
Yeah.
I lost count after 1, apparently.
We got kicked off of OnlyFans. We can't do anything on there anymore.
Farmersonly.com wouldn't let us stream live. So yeah. The Twitter page is at TIIDT podcast. And then obviously Facebook, just look up Talking Into Infinity. So we'll catch you guys in 2 weeks on Wednesday, September 21st at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Brian, it was good to see you, man.
You too, buddy.
I'll see you in 2 weeks. And all you guys, I'll see you in 2 weeks. And until then, Carpe Diem.